Hi, I am Pratim Ranjan Bose, and you are watching Podcast with Pratim, presented by Iravati Research and Communication Center, or IRCC. In episode 81, we explored Iran-Israel conflict and its implications from the perspective of Ambassador Anil Trigunath. In this episode, we will see Iran-Israel conflict through the eyes of Anant Mishra. Anant is a scholar in military strategy and a visiting fellow at the International Center for Policing and Security at the University of South Wales. Welcome, Anant.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me here.
Anant, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not showing any relent in his attacks. In July, political chief of Hamas was killed in Iran. A day before, that was on the day the reformist Prime Minister Dr. Pezeshkian was taking oath. A day before that, he killed Hezbollah commander. Then some days before, there was Iranian consulate was attacked in Syria. Right now, body bags are piling in Lebanon. The axis of resistance is attacked all around, irrespective of the collateral damage. Meanwhile, Gaza peace deal has gone for a toss. Iran has not made any solid retaliation so far. There was an expectation that it would avoid war at this juncture. But Iran named some sites which will be attacked by its associates. So what's happening? Where do you see this going? Over to you.
Sir, thank you for having me here. And sir, it's very interesting the way you've put it. You've actually narrated it in a way where there's a sequence that is happening. However, sir, let me tell you that with the killing of the senior commander Fouad Shukr that you mentioned, in which he was killed in southern Beirut, and then we saw Hamas political bureau chief Ismail Haniyeh again assassinated in Tehran. Um, Immediately after that, there was a lot of apprehensions as to will there going to be an all-out regional war. However, there are two principal actors in play which are currently under extreme pressure. One is Iran and second is Hezbollah. Now, I'm not going to name Hamas here because, again, we all know that Hamas is part of the Axis. But the principal player here is Iran and Hezbollah. And immediately after Ismail Haniyeh, we saw a very strange, I would say, a little ambiguity whether Iran will attack today, tomorrow, this week, perhaps 2 weeks from now. But this also resulted in Iran and Hezbollah under extreme international pressure to limit their response against Israel, in a way that to kind of inflame the situation into a major retaliation, whether Israel will also attack or not. So during this time, we also saw US-Iranian negotiations, both direct and indirect, kind of restraining the Tehran from mobilizing its allies on multiple fronts and perhaps sparking a region-wide conflict. Now, I've got sources within Tehran who've talked about very openly that there is a delay in Tehran's response because it happened during the time President Pezeshkian took over. There were evidence that currently the IRGC is looking up. Hamas is also supporting in the investigation. This also falls on perhaps a long-term operation. So
Evidence of compromise, as you were saying, that their
yes, so
security was compromised.
yes. Yes, absolutely. Hence, there could be a long-term operation that could have been, I would say, smelling in Tehran that could not only jeopardize the current negotiation that Washington is doing, but this also inflames the IRGC's anger because, again, this happened in Tehran. So we need to understand that this happened during the time when Pezeshkian was, second day of President Pezeshkian's power, and in Tehran. So but this is also a time where we are seeing the great power nations coming into play. So we saw Sergei Shoigu visiting Iran in early August. There were off the record sources in Moscow who said that Shoigu essentially came in to provide solidarity to Tehran, and those sources also confirmed that his response was to curtail the offensives and rather instead provide support. During his during his interaction with the senior leadership, he said that it is important that Tehran must not fall into the trap of President Benjamin Netanyahu, who's essentially this attack is essentially seen as igniting a regional war that would not only directly involve the US, but it would also bring Moscow in play. So one of the third messages that he sent to the leadership there was the confrontation that is essentially taking place in Syrian territory. And he said, which is essentially covering the Russian interests and military bases there. So any attack in that particular area or any escalation in that area is essentially going to flare up Syria, and this could damage, many interests in the region, particularly of Moscow. So after the attack of, after the attack and after the killing of Haniyeh, we saw Yahya Sinwar coming up and becoming the new political leader of Hamas. So most of the stakeholders again began engaging with US, Egypt, and Qatar, and they have had rounds of conversations with Yahya Sinwar, who, according to those who've been on the ground, they agreed that Yahya Sinwar also talks about having a truce. Now he has been appointed the Hamas, Khalil Al-Hayya, to represent the movement in negotiation. But Sinwar again holds the final say whether he intends to have a negotiation or he intends to retaliate in a major way. But Tehran is under pressure even from Hamas, because this reflects Tehran's position. This compromises Tehran's positions within the axis, because the attack not only happened in Tehran, but also the implication of one of the Hamas uh, uh, proximity security team relaying the information, or however it happened. So the negotiations have again resulting up in the region, which reflects towards a ceasefire. Now, from the perspective of Hamas, Hamas wants a
I would
long-term.
like to ask you one thing.
Yes.
Sorry for interjection.
No,
Uh,
no.
this thing is going on, and essentially, Israel is pounding.
Yeah.
And they might have reached a lot of damages to the IRGC and Hamas and Hezbollah. But these guys will fight, get back, bounce back
Yes.
today or
Yes.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Now, what
Yes.
I'm failing to, and you were saying, see, we all know that after the attack on Syrian consulate of Iran, where top leaders of IRGC died, so it was US which restricted Iran from any big major retaliation, right? It was merely for show. The point
Yes.
is, right at this moment, Israeli attacks are taking the entire region to a hilt.
Yes.
The OIC has supported Iran, right?
Yes. Yes.
So a point has to come or will come when the entire region has to go on the offensive against Israel. This is one possibility. The other possibility is that whether US is also apparently not very happy with Netanyahu. His popularity in his own country is very low. He has differences with his own colleagues, right? So the what I'm just trying to understand from you, that is he kind of giving war a last chance, or I mean, either him or the region, someone must suffer. This is the kind of a
So,
situation.
absolutely. So let me
Because
tell you,
I forgot to say that in the meantime, 40,000 people have died. The world
that
cannot
died. Yes.
sit on that anymore.
Yes. So sir, let me I'm not very keen on criticizing the Israelis or criticizing perhaps somebody who's sitting here way far from war. It is easy for us to make a comment or criticize, but one of the biggest mistake Benjamin Netanyahu did during his presidency is killing Ismail Haniyeh. Now, Ismail Haniyeh as a character, if you look at his pattern of behavior and his structure of how he used to function, he was one of the few leadership within Hamas who advocated for a peace deal. Now, he was also on the verge of having peace negotiations in exchange of hostages. Now, when you take somebody who's liberal away, another mistake that Benjamin Netanyahu did was he targeted
So Haniyeh
inside.
was for a peace deal.
Haniyeh was for a peace deal. Haniyeh wanted to go for a peace deal. He was going for peaceful negotiations. He was advocating for exchange of hostages. So that makes it all the more interesting, because why do it? So I understand the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. This is not the first time Israel's top spy agency has done this. But inside Tehran, second day of a reformist president who again went to Ayatollah and he pleaded him not to retaliate. So you have already a
Huge
reformist
messaging
president.
here. Huge messaging
Yeah.
here. That
So
who,
he was
who is the warmonger?
so it's absolutely disastrous to force not only Pezeshkian on his second day, but also to take away the one individual who's advocating inside Hamas to exchange hostages and to exchange, to go for a peace negotiation. So this was now there is Yahya Sinwar is more radical than Ismail Haniyeh was. So giving space to Yahya Sinwar was a blunder that Benjamin Netanyahu did. Now, coming back to the alternatives that you talked about, so if I summarize your connotations, will there going to be a regional war? So let me put out three scenarios that I
Which the world cannot afford.
absolutely. So
Because
sir,
whether it
I
is Russia, US, China, India, whosoever, everyone, no one will say yes to this.
so sir, there are three possible scenarios, as I said, sir, that would emerge if Hezbollah respond. Now, in the first scenario, Israel would face heavy pressure not to respond or escalate further even if Hezbollah responds. Now, the rules of engagement of this response would largely be felt in the south of Lebanon, and it would largely be felt in Dhaya. So the situation is, however, this situation is highly unlikely. But in another situation, in a second scenario, I again present a hypothesis where Hezbollah would put a heavy blow, where Israel, unable to accept such a strike without responding, would hit back. Now, this is going to provoke a limited escalation, which could go on for days, back and forth, both Hezbollah, Hamas, PIJ, and Tel Aviv going against each other in series of strikes. Now, in the second scenario, is going to be similar to the confrontations that would underplay in southern Lebanon, but the exchanges of fire would largely include Daya itself. Now, this would involve major international interventions where the great power nations would involve, and then they would come up for a ceasefire, perhaps to call off the strikes from both the end, and there will be again peaceful negotiations up in process, where great power nations would come in and they would talk about curtailing to the rules of engagement, to more dialogue and more discussion. In a third scenario,
Yeah.
the escalation is going to be a full-scale war, which you rightly pointed out in your opening remarks, dragging Iran and other nations, um, closing all vital shipping lanes, and definitely involving the US directly or indirectly. Now, this would all not only involve Hezbollah striking targets inside the center of Israel. This scenario, although unlikely, because there are a lot of moving parts, there are a lot of parties involved that do not really want a regional war. And to be very honest, Netanyahu is not one of them. Now, Hezbollah feels
I'm just stopping you here. I'm leaving the third option out. It is a theoretical option.
the theoretical option. Absolutely.
It's practically, it has no practical possibility. The world will come to stop it at any cost.
at any
because
cost. Absolutely.
you see the all large economies are either are in trouble. So another war will destroy everyone.
Will destroy everyone. Yes, sir.
So the solution here is, I mean, we are so far we are talking about war, who will attack whom or will not attack, right? The big issue is Netanyahu, by his let us look at the whatever had happened. So 40,000 people are killed. The reformist groups are targeted, killed. So there should be, as you said, there should be more fundamentalist guys who will take over, more militant.
Absolutely.
So tension is rising.
Absolutely.
It means a solution has to, Netanyahu doesn't have successes on his side. The
Right.
hostages are still there. Back to the topic is that finally Hamas, Iran or whatever, they are looking for that two-state solution and an end to what they say as Israel's aggression. And from Israel's part, I believe, do you think that it is not, it wanted to finish its adversaries, but probably messed it up somewhere? That is, as a layman, I am thinking. What is your opinion?
Sir, actually, what you're saying is absolutely right. And to put it more into a strategic thinking, you take out top two guys. You take out now. It's very interesting, sir. When you look at the level of delegation that came up to attend President Pezeshkian's parliament speech and his taking over as the president, this targeting Ismail Haniyeh, instead of that, they could have targeted the entire top leadership. Or not only that, they would have also had the ability to target Quds Corps commanders as well. But they specifically chose Ismail Haniyeh, and they specifically chose Tehran. So this is not something a half
Specifically embarrassed the reformist prime
they
minister.
embarrassed the reformist. Yeah, absolutely, sir. Absolutely. They embarrassed the reformist president. And this is something you wouldn't, until and unless you don't want to send a message. So, sir, the ball is in Iran's court. Let me be very categorical in saying this, because until now, Islamic Republic has demonstrated strategic restraint. They've controlled the narrative of the war.
They cannot for long before such
I
provocation.
Absolutely, sir. That is the reason. That is the reason why the small window is for Western economies and power nations to open diplomatic channel, which they are essentially doing to reduce the tension between the two states. Now, this would involve greater dialogue, but a certain de-escalation is in a short window before Tehran chooses to retaliate. Now, will Tehran retaliate, sir? The entire decision now rests on Ayatollah himself and how the progress have been made in terms of discussions with Washington, because Washington has a red line. It's a
And
red line has been.
Iran, I think, has an agenda here. Iran wants the restoration of the nuclear deal.
Not only that, sir, the Iran has an image, a prestige to defend, because this happened on the second day of President Pezeshkian's
That was too
oath.
much.
So now the ball is in Tehran's court. Now the trajectory of this escalation, and as you rightly said, the future of the Middle East rests majorly on how Tehran and its axis retaliate.